What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 275 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, I just talk about what's going on in my business personally, what I'm focused on, and a little update on how to hardscape in general. But before we get into today's episode, we want to thank our sponsors, Cycle CPA. And if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know how to hardscape sent you for money off their services there. Knowledge Tree Consulting, if you are looking for somebody to help you in your business, I would highly recommend Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in our industry, and you've heard them on the podcast multiple times before. George and Peter of Oriole Landscaping, and George a couple of other times talking about various topics, and we'll definitely have George on in the future to talk more. But you can learn more about them at knowledgetreeconsulting.com. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. So this year, I really focused on very small in and out projects. I, in my own business, wanted to be really flexible in my schedule to be able to serve our How to Hardscape headquarters members with onboarding and customer support and so on. So I really wanted my schedule to remain flexible, and I was pretty successful in doing that, kind of marketing towards clients that were looking for really, really quick projects. And but recently I've had quite a few projects kind of come across, and I've decided to take them on, mostly because we sold our first porcelain projects. And porcelain is something that I've been wanting to get into probably since midway point of last year, and going through the different installation methods with it and wanting to at least try it. And I didn't really have a great way of really discussing it with clients and in consultations. It was always just that throwaway option that somebody reached out for a backyard patio project, and I just wanted to say, before you decide to go ahead with pavers, there are other options such as porcelain. And these are the benefits of porcelain. They're scratch resistant, UV resistant, and stain resistant. Especially with trees overhead, it might be beneficial to think about going ahead with porcelain as an option. But for the most part, I immediately got a no for porcelain. And I really think it came down to cost. A lot of people really think that porcelain would blow away their budget. But this year, there seemed to be a little bit of a turnaround. And I've had 3 projects now kind of fall into my lap. One from my supplier, a referral, and they weren't considering porcelain, but I brought it up as an option, and they immediately hopped on it. And I'm excited to start that actually this coming week. But it was not necessarily something that they had on their radar. And it was because when I scheduled our initial consultation, which comes after a pre-qualification process of asking them about their project in an email and asking for a photo of their backyard space and any ideas that they've already researched in terms of what they want, and then going back and forth on, okay, this is a project we've done that's similar to the project that you want. This one cost around this much money, and this is what we could do your project for. And then if they're interested, we'll then schedule that initial consultation. And in that initial consultation, I've really tried to bring these booklet samples of different products that we can install for them. So I always have a paver booklet from a certain paver manufacturer that has made it really easy for me to carry around a specific paver product that I install on probably about 60% of my projects. And then I have a natural stone booklet that has little 2-inch by 2-inch swatches of the natural stone that my supplier carries through a certain manufacturer or importer, I guess, of natural stone. And then recently I got from my sales rep of Porcelain Stone these Porcelain Stone booklets, which are amazing. I've got a little box of 4x8 porcelain of maybe 5 different more popular products. I also saw them at conferences during the off season and got a couple of more, and also have a couple of booklets of 2 centimeter and 3 centimeter porcelain swatches, which are probably 3 inches by 3 inches. And these have really helped to allow clients in that initial consultation to touch and see and actually understand the difference between porcelain, natural stone, and pavers, because we do want to give them those options and let them know the benefits of each of them, possible drawbacks of each of them, and to allow them to make the best decision that meets what they need for their space. So this particular client, I had all of these different samples ready to show them, just to kind of get that conversation started. What I tell people is I'll get that conversation started in that initial consultation. I'll show you the different products that we could install. But for the quote, what I'm going to include is just a basic $5 square foot paver. And I'll include that link to that paver in the quote. And that's just a typical 3 size mixture paver, the 6x13, 13x13, 13x19, that style of paver, because I feel it covers quite a bit of clients and what they're looking for. But I then tell them that, you know what, if you want to move forward with the project, the next step would be to discuss more about products and how we can go ahead and narrow down on the exact product that you want. What that typically looks like, especially for projects that are more than $10,000, would be meeting me at the stone supplier, seeing the different demo racks, and deciding on a couple of products, and then I'll bring out some samples for you. Rarely it gets to that point. Usually I can send them a link of option A, B, or C, and they kind of know exactly what they want, and I can bring out samples from there if they're looking at different color samples. Regardless, I do always like to bring out samples to clients just so that they know what it looks like. It's always going to look different in a picture, on a website, or anything like that than it will in actual person. So I like to take the risk of product showing up that I've already ordered on a job site and the client not liking it because it doesn't look like what it looks like in the pictures. I like to take the risk out of that as much as possible. So what I was saying is, this client, I didn't even get to the point of actually meeting them at the stone supplier. I mentioned that porcelain, it would be about X dollars a square foot more if we were to install porcelain on this project. And these are the benefits of porcelain, and listed them out in the email. And they immediately said, we want to go with porcelain. So I brought out all of my different samples that I have of porcelain. I just dropped it off at their house. They looked through them. They said that they wanted to go with a specific color, and we're happy to proceed with that. And that's just basically how I got my first, or probably second, porcelain project, because I think I sold the other one first, but that was how I went ahead and landed that first porcelain project. Now we're going to be installing it this week. And for the installation, I've seen different installation methods. I've seen just dry laid on top of HPB, which for us would be an open graded base, 3/4 inch clear, HPB on top as a bedding layer, and we'd always include a biaxial geogrid layer within that and our non-woven geotextile at the very bottom to separate our subgrade from our paver base. So I've heard people go that route. The problem with that, from what I've heard from other people, is that it just causes so much movement and grinding when you step on the sides and the corners of these porcelain products. And it's really, you don't get the interlock with the 1 inch and porcelain products that you do with a 2 3/8 inch paver with polymeric sand in the joints. The other problem I've heard is polymeric sand just doesn't really adhere to the porcelain, though I know Techniseal, I'll say them because they're the only one I know that has a specific porcelain polymeric sand to go along with porcelain. So that's the downside to dry laying, and that's not even an option for me based on the feedback that I've heard. So the other two options I've heard is a product that we've actually covered on the I Am a Hardscaper YouTube channel, and this is the Trass bedding by Romex. And we've had Romex on the show, and we've actually talked about the Trass bedding there. And I met them at H&A, and we did a demo for the I Am a Hardscaper YouTube channel. And all this is you mix HPB with this cementitious binding material, and then you screed it out at 1.5 inches, and then you back butter your porcelain with an elutriant that they also supply, and then you lay it on top of that. So I'm going to go with that method, and there's two different options for that. There's the pedestrian method, which is Trass around the border, not around the hard, where it's against hard surfaces. Think of it as more of like an edge restraint almost. At least that's how I consider it, because you wouldn't do it up against the foundation, but anywhere that there's a soft area, you would screed your Trass bedding. I think it's like 3 feet, but don't quote me on that. And it needs to extend out at least 3 inches beyond the final porcelain. And then you back butter your porcelain using that elutriant and set it into that Trass while it's still wet, not when it's all cured. And then so you can do that route, and then HPB in the middle, and you still back butter the porcelain in the field where it's just loose HPB, and that's what helps keep the not only the hollow sound down on your porcelain, which would be laid on loose HPB. If you step on the porcelain, you get this very hollow sound apparently, and it also helps with the movement in the porcelain. And then we're going to use a semi-permeable jointing compound in the joints for that, and that's the route we're going to go. It's only rated for pedestrian. For vehicular traffic, you'd have to do Trass bed everywhere, and that would be the route to go with actual traffic, actual vehicular traffic as opposed to pedestrian traffic. Now this adds a lot of cost in perspective to the project, as well as it increases the labor. So porcelain is more expensive per square foot for the material, as is the Trass bedding layer, as well as the labor involved with actually laying it out. Especially when it's going to be my first time, I'll be measuring how long it takes me. It's a 410 square foot approximately patio. So I'll be measuring out how long it takes me for my Trass and for just back buttering and laying the entire porcelain project. And all of this will be covered on the I'm a Hardscaper YouTube channel there as well. So with that, I also then sold a second. We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes, when it's often too late to take action to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. Oh, actually, before I move on from that, I have a mud mixer, and if you do follow the I Am a Hardscaper YouTube channel, you'll see the different things that I use and that I have. But I have that mud mixer that you may have seen on Instagram, where you break up a bag of concrete to the top chute, and then it mixes automatically water into that concrete and spews it out at the end. And I've used it for hot tub pads and other things that wouldn't be seen for concrete piers and so on. What I found is it's difficult to get the perfect water to concrete ratio, and I want that for my Trass bedding layer. So I had the option of 3 options. One, mixing. I have one of those Milwaukee mud mixers, battery powered things that you just add a mixer spindle, whatever, to it. You can mix manually. I already have that is always going to be an option while we're on the job site. I also have the mud mixer, as I mentioned. I could buy a actual concrete mixing machine, and I didn't go that route. I bought a steel mixer, and this is STEELE mixer. It is not something that I'm endorsing. I haven't used, but I've seen it on Instagram, YouTube. It's just this manual mixing machine. The thing I like about it is it's super simple. It doesn't look like anything's going to break on it. It's just a tub with 2 handles on it that you mix from side to side. And it takes apparently 40 seconds to mix a bag of concrete. So that's the route I'm going to go with this Trass, and be able to mix that HBB with the cementitious binding material and water to be able to do that for my bedding layer for that Trass, and see how that goes. Maybe I might bring my mud mixer and see how that mixes the Trass, but ultimately I want to really be able to have a good control of water to HPB cement ratio for this Trass bedding layer. So I did buy that to try out. That'll be also on the YouTube channel. At the same time, actually, before I signed this project up, I had already been in talks with a client on a larger backyard space where we're going to be doing a patio gas fire feature. We're going to be running other gas lines for future phases, perhaps, and doing a seat wall and 16 steps going up the sides, some retaining walls. And for this, I met this client at my supplier. This is one of them that for those larger projects, I definitely want to meet them at my supplier. And for those larger projects, at least for me, meeting them at the supplier, they always want to as well, whenever I bring that up. And I met them, and I started my whole spiel on, these are the pavers that we usually start people off at, but what kind of paver kind of matches what you're looking for? And they went to a manufacturer that I dislike using, and just basically experiences in the past with this certain manufacturer's products. But it was only these manufacturers' products that were on the demos and displays out there that they liked. No matter how much I asked them, what about this one? It's somewhat similar. They kept on coming back to 2 or 3 products from this specific manufacturer. So I gave in and I said, okay, we'll choose this color, this color. I'll bring out samples to your house. But what I'm going to do is I'm also going to drop off some samples of porcelain. And they immediately thought, porcelain. They even said that's probably out of our budget. And I said to them, you may be surprised, but it's always an option that when I quote, or after I quote, and I've included that $5 square foot, and we've already met at the supplier based on that quote, I'll update it based on these choices that you've made. But also for porcelain, you decide if you think that the porcelain would be the best route for you based on your budget, but also think about the benefits that comes with porcelain as well, considering that there are trees around. You're going to get those organic staining on pavers with fall coming, with leaves falling on the patio. And you're also going to be using this for barbecuing. You said that you wanted a pizza oven in here in the future, and so on and so forth here. So it's obviously going to be a space that you use often, and you could be susceptible to stains, and porcelain is stain resistant. So always consider that into your option. So I brought them out their 3 pavers that they liked from that certain manufacturer, and then I dropped them off all of my porcelain samples. I dropped everything off for them to see. And a week later, they came back to me and said, you know what? We're going to go with porcelain. And that turned into a much larger project because of that. And they were happy with the price point that it came at. I think a lot of people still think porcelain is this very much more expensive than they would imagine versus pavers. But a lot of pavers, especially getting into the like face mix pavers, are already fairly comparable to where porcelain is at. And once you're getting into, okay, they like a face mix paver, really, if you bump that up $1 a square foot, not to mention you do have to consider your labor cost when you get into installing porcelain, which is also going to bump up that square footage pricing. Not to say that I price by square foot. If you listen to any of these podcast episodes in the past, you'll know that I don't price by the square foot, but just kind of going off of what we're talking about here. The porcelain will add more cost per square foot with the labor installed, of course, and with that truss bedding. I like to use now in my installs, for the most part, that semi-permeable jointing compound, which is also going to triple the cost versus polymeric sand. But I think it is beneficial to the end result of the project. But with all that being said, all of these increases in prices, you really have to explain and communicate to the client the value that they're getting out of that. Otherwise, you're not comparing apples to apples. If they see the quote for that $5 square foot paver, if they see the quote for a face mix paver, and then they see a quote for a porcelain product in their patio, without the communication of the benefits of each of these different products, the benefits, the downfalls, they don't have anything to compare with in perspective. They don't know. They just see a dollar amount, and they may really like the porcelain, but without knowing the benefits of porcelain, they may just go with the cheaper paver, because why would they want to pay X dollars a square foot more for their project when really they still like the paver, just the porcelain may be a little bit better in their eyes aesthetically. So really what I'm going to be doing here is really focusing on creating videos for the YouTube channel around these projects that actually I'm going to be doing back to back. So I'm going to be doing that 410 square foot porcelain patio. The next one is, I think, like 600 square feet plus a walkway, and then all these steps and a seat wall and a couple more steps. That one's going to come right after. But all this is, I'm going to be creating separate videos. And one is going to be a very straightforward guide to installing porcelain, especially on that truss bedding layer. And all of that's going to be great for the YouTube channel, but it's also going to be great for explaining to future clients, hey, here's the benefits of porcelain. Here's why you might want a porcelain project. Here's the added steps that we go to install the porcelain, so that you're not going to have, going to have to call us back because some of the tiles are lifting up on you when you step on the corners or anything like that. And here's what sets us apart from other contractors that might be installing porcelain as well. And this is what could happen if you were to install porcelain improperly. All of that's going to play a major role in being able to sell porcelain in the future. Anytime. One problem that I've had this year is in my pre-qualification process, I think I scare away more people than I really need to when I give them a price based on a photo that they send me of their space and what they're kind of looking for, without sending them, you know what, this is why we charge what we charge. Because I do think we charge more than market-based pricing for our services. And without them understanding exactly why we charge what we charge based on our installation methods, they kind of get scared away from that price and may walk away. So what I'm working on is, okay, based on what you're telling me, this is the way we would go ahead and install it with our scope of work that we include in our proposals, if you heard me talk about that in the past. And this is how much we would charge for that. So at least if this is somebody that just started reaching out to contractors, or just me, they know, okay, there's videos on how they're going to install it. They've got great communication. Yes, let's book that initial consultation. Or B, they have reached out to a lot of different contractors at the same time. Then they get different email communication from each of these contractors. They get different specificity on each of those emails from the different contractors. And they also can start to see which contractors may be a little bit more detailed than other contractors, and be able to decide what contractor they may want to go for, or see, as I kind of got carried away in the last one, see they've already gotten quotes from other contractors, and now they're looking for somebody else to also give them a quote. And in each of these different scenarios, providing them a lot of information can really help them create a decision on where they want to take that, whether they want to book an initial consultation or not. And I think that I do have a lot of people falling through the cracks with that, and I can really improve the process of pre-qualification by including certain links in our website, which also has our installation methods there as well. And Porcelain is just that next step that I do want to take and be able to offer to clients, because I do think it's a great product, and I do think it's going to be a very valuable product for our clients. All that to say, I'm going to be filming a lot of this, posting it on the I Am a Hardscaper YouTube channel, and using this in future sales processes within my business. And that's the whole point of that YouTube channel, besides just also creating good quality content for future hardscapers, for current hardscapers, for homeowners maybe wanting to take on their project, and so on. So I heard this before, and it really struck a chord with me. And what I'm really trying to do is, if you can be a company whose marketing pays for itself, you got to step up on other companies. And a great example of this would be a company like Red Bull, who puts on events, Red Bull events, and has Red Bull ambassadors participate in these events. But these events really pay for themselves in terms of, this is a specific Red Bull sport event, or extreme sport event, or whatever it might be, that gets great awareness to their audience and to other audiences that may be interested in Red Bull. But all in all, it also pays for itself in the attention that it gets, in the awareness that it brings, not only for the ROI of the marketing dollars spent, but also in attendees to those events, and any other residual income that they can make from those events. So if you could be a company that makes money from their marketing, and in turn also make clients from that marketing, you've got a huge step up from your competitors when it comes to that. So that's where I see this whole kind of content game, like it or not, is really going for the future of companies. And that's not just in our industry, that's in every industry. We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in the industry with 35 plus years of industry experience building Oriole landscaping in Toronto, which they are completely hands off at this point. George and Peter have been on the podcast before, and George, on multiple occasions now, I've personally leaned on him to help with the How to Hardscape headquarters software and how we can maximize the efficiency of user experience. And I know the guys at DTE Landscaping, Chuck and Jeffrey, who we've also had on the show multiple times, have hired them on in the past. Check out their consulting services, peer groups, and events that are coming up on their website, knowledgetreeconsulting.com, or check them out on Instagram at joinktc. Now back to our episode. Another benefit that I also should mention in full transparency is filming everything is not only great for content, filming everything is also great to show your client what you did. I had a client earlier this year that was going away, but they had something that they wanted done. They wanted their polymeric sand replaced in their patio and walkway. And they wanted it done immediately, but they were going to be away for at least a month. So I told them, we can take it on and you don't have to wait. What I'll do is, I do film everything. I'll tell you that. We film it in a time lapse. I can send you that time lapse at the end so that you can see exactly what we did, and I'll show you a video walkthrough of it when it's completed, and you'll know that it's done to our standards and to yours as well, just based on what you see in the video. Also, I sent them a video of us doing a polymeric sander replacement so that they know exactly what they were getting into in our process in doing so. Before they even signed on. So they happily signed on. When I finished the project, I sent them the time lapse. They knew exactly what was done. They saw the end product in video format. They transferred the money, no problem, to and thanked us for our work as well. So filming everything's great for that, but it's also, filming everything's great for marketing. It's great for your website. It's great for your clients. And it's great for your business and liability. I had a French drain project that I did recently, completed it, and talked to the client via email afterwards. I even did a walkthrough with them as well. And they said, they emailed me back, said their gate was a little bit off in the latch. It seemed that their latch was a little bit lower. And they said, it's no problem, Mike. I understand that you took off the gate to be able to get your machine into the backyard. Just wondering if you could come back and remedy this situation. And I had a video, unfortunately not of where the gate latch was initially, but I have a video of, hey, we actually didn't take off your gate, and I don't really know why the gate would not be latching properly compared to where you were. I don't remember the gate not latching properly, but here's our time-lapse video just to show you that we actually didn't take your gate off or anything like that. But that's a smaller scenario compared to, hey, we had our foundation crack or something like that while you're working on site. You must have hit it. Not something that's happened to me, but it's always great to have a full time lapse of the project for all these different purposes, as well as liability purposes for your own business, and something that could be beneficial to start, especially with cameras being readily available. Your cell phone has time lapses. GoPro's fairly inexpensive. There's lots of things that you can do to just set something up and have that available to you, at least in the future if you wanted to. The winter season, if you don't do anything and you want to focus on your business, the website, etc., a time lapse or editing or creating content during that time could be a really good time to focus on your business and what it can do in terms of marketing for that. Speaking of pre-qualification and the importance of it and not breaking your company procedures. Every time that I've regretted it for the most part. I had somebody reach out to me, an elderly couple, ask me, Mike, we want our patio walkways relayed, and I asked them, would you be able to send me a photo of the space so I can kind of give you a good ballpark as to how much it's going to cost? They said they don't really know how technology works, wondering, can you please come out, take a look, give us a quote, whenever is convenient for you. So I waited until a time that I was going to be in the area and went out and met them. And immediately, this was not a job that I would have taken on. So I'd already wasted my time, but I walked through the property with them. They mentioned a tree was heaving up a certain part of the walkway. Could I cut the tree's roots out and re-level that area? But it was multiple areas. It was very close to the tree. I mentioned it's going to keep on happening. And these tree roots were very large. And probably you wouldn't want to cut those roots for the future health of that tree. And they mentioned a few pavers here and there that were settling that they wanted picked up and relayed. These were 4x8s as well. And it just wasn't worth my time. We got to their backyard patio. They had a certain corner that they wanted lifted and relayed. But then I looked to the side of the patio, and their patio almost had a swale in it that was 8 inches in depth. The pavers following that swale in half of the patio. It followed the shape of their backyard, where the patio actually dipped down and up. And I mentioned, this looks like an area you'd also want relayed, and they said no. Actually, they were fine with that huge dip in their one side of the patio, as long as it kind of matched up with where the grass was at. And I thought, ooh, okay, this is, if I even took on this small little project of cutting a tree's roots here and there, lifting a few pavers, what is my liability if this elderly couple fell and hurt themselves on this certain area? And it came back that I went there and actually fixed just a few areas, and maybe didn't fix that area, or so on and so forth there. It in general, it was just not a project that I would have ever taken on. Luckily, it didn't waste too much of my time. I was in the area, happy to go over and talk with them about it, but took up half an hour of my time that I don't want to do in the future. So that just goes to breaking that procedure of pre-qualification. What do I expect from my clients? What do I expect them to send me? And making sure I continue to follow that. It's difficult because I'm sure I'll make the same exception in the future if that ever came up again. But ideally, I get a photo to know exactly what I'm getting into prior to actually going there and pricing it out. I'm sure even if I got a photo from that specific potential client, that I may have been able to scare them away with a price and saying, if we were to lift and relay this whole thing, it would have been X amount of dollars, and then they wouldn't have been interested in the first place. That probably would have been the way that went. But goes to show that don't break your procedures, don't break what you try to do in your company, especially in that pre-qualification process, especially if you're owner operator, especially if your time is extremely valuable in those senses. But that is where I'm going to stop this episode. If you enjoy these little company updates on my part and what I'm thinking and what I'm planning to do in the future, I would appreciate feedback. You can message me on Instagram at howtohardscape if you would like to, and I'd be happy to take a look at what you think of these episodes and any questions that you may have in the future. I'll continue to ask questions or leave a question bubble on Instagram in the stories for you to ask your questions, but feel free to shoot me a question at any time that you want and that you'd want addressed on the How to Hardscape podcast here as well. Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Check out our sponsors. Cycle CPA, if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. And Knowledge Tree Consulting, if you're looking for efficiency consultants who have a lot of experience in our industry. Check out Knowledge Tree Consulting at knowledgetreeconsulting.com. And if you're looking for a software to dive into this season or going into the off season, check out the How to Hardscape headquarters software, which will help you budget, estimate job costs, time track, schedule, and training resources for installation of concrete pavement, installation of segmental retaining walls, budgeting, estimating, lots of different courses there to help you with your hardscape business and train employees as well. That is at members.howtohardscape.com, or send me a message at howtohardscape on Instagram. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.